Welcome to Podcastify, your personal generative AI podcast. Today we're diving into some market-moving news across sectors, from software giants to retail resilience, and even a bit of crypto chatter. Buckle up.
Sounds like a packed agenda. Where should we begin?
Well, the biggest potential shakeup has to be in the software sector. Autodesk, the design software powerhouse, is apparently eyeing a takeover of PTC Inc.
PTC Inc., the engineering software folks.
Exactly. And it seems they're not just playing hard to get. Other industry players are sniffing around too. This could really reshape the engineering software landscape.
Big time. Consolidation often leads to, well, let's just say interesting times for competitors and customers alike. What's next on the docket?
Let's shift gears to retail. Costco, the king of bulk buying, just reported some impressive June sales figures. Over $26 billion, an 8% jump year over year.
$26 billion. That's a lot of rotisserie chickens. Even with inflation, those numbers are strong. What about comparable sales? That's the real test in retail.
Right you are. Comparable sales are up a healthy 5.8% company-wide. It seems people still love that treasure hunt experience, even if they have to buy a year's supply of ketchup to get it.
Haha, no argument there. Okay, so software and retail, what other sectors are on our radar today?
Let's talk healthcare. Telix Pharmaceuticals is celebrating a win for their PSMA PET imaging agent, Gozellix. It just received a permanent HCPS code.
Now, forgive my ignorance, but what exactly does a HCPS code signify in the healthcare world?
Think reimbursement approval. That code essentially unlocks the revenue potential for Gozellix, which is a major growth driver for Telix. It's a big deal.
Ah, I see. That makes sense. So, good news for Telix. What else?
Not all sunshine and roses, I'm afraid. There are some legal clouds gathering over Doximity and Dexcom. Shareholder investigations have been launched, alleging misconduct.
Oh, misconduct? That never sounds good. What kind of misconduct are we talking about here?
For Doximity, it's about potential officer and director misconduct. And for Dexcom, it's focused on alleged breaches of fiduciary duty.
So legal risks on the horizon. We'll have to see how those play out. What's next?
So it looks like PTC has more than one admirer. Other players are circling, which could mean a bidding war or at least some serious negotiation leverage for PTC.
Yeah, definitely. A bidding war would be interesting. It could drive the price up significantly. Who else do you think might be in the mix?
Well, it's anyone's guess at this point, but Dassault Systèmes, Siemens, maybe even a private equity firm could jump in. It's a tempting target for sure.
It is. A lot of potential synergies there, depending on who the buyer is. Okay, so moving on from software, we were talking about Costco, right? Those sales figures were pretty impressive.
Right. 26 billion with a B is not a small number, even for a giant like Costco.
Exactly. And that 5.8% comp sales growth, that's really the key metric. It shows they're not just relying on new store openings or inflation, they're actually selling more stuff.
Absolutely. They're holding on to market share and even growing it. It's a testament to their business model. The treasure hunt experience, bulk buying, it resonates with consumers, clearly.
It does. Although I have to say I've never been able to resist buying more than I need at Costco. I always end up with a year's supply of something.
Haha, I know the feeling. It's the Costco effect. Okay, so we've covered software and retail. What was next on our list? Healthcare?
Yes, Telix Pharmaceuticals and their HCPCS code win. So just to recap, that code basically makes it easier for them to get reimbursed for their imaging agent, right?
Precisely. It's a big step toward wider adoption and increased revenue. Think of it as a green light for sales growth. It removes a significant hurdle for them.
Right? So a positive catalyst for Telix. And then we had some less positive news regarding Doximity and Dexcom, I believe.
Yes, those were the two. Shareholder investigations, never a good sign. One for Doximity, for potential officer and director misconduct, and one for Dexcom, alleged breaches of fiduciary duty.
So pretty serious stuff. Definitely something to keep an eye on. And then, last but not least, crypto, right?
Right. Remember that Bitcoin ETF buzz from BlackRock and Invesco? Seems like WisdomTree has also joined the race. They've filed an application for a spot Bitcoin ETF.
Oh, another one? So the race is really heating up. Do you think the SEC will finally budge?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The SEC has been pretty resistant to spot Bitcoin ETFs so far, but With so many big players applying, the pressure is definitely mounting.
It is. And with Grayscale's recent legal victory, the SEC's arguments against a spot Bitcoin ETF are looking weaker. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
So, after that good news for Telix, it looks like we have some less positive developments in the healthcare sector. Shareholder investigations? Never a good sign.
Yeah, not exactly a vote of confidence. Doximity and Dexcom, right? What are the specifics?
Well, for Doximity, the investigation centers around potential officer and director misconduct. You know, the folks at the top.
And Dexcom?
Similar story, but different angle. The investigation there is focused on alleged breaches of fiduciary duty.
So both are facing legal scrutiny, but for different reasons. What sort of impact could these investigations have on the companies?
Well, that's the thing. These investigations, they can be a long, drawn-out process. Even if nothing ultimately comes of it, the legal fees, the reputational damage, it can all take a toll.
Definitely. And if any wrongdoing is actually uncovered, well, that's a whole other can of worms. Fines, lawsuits, management shakeups, it can get messy.
Exactly. Uncertainty is never good for investors. We'll have to wait and see how these investigations play out. Anything else on the healthcare front?
Not that I'm aware of. But I think we should talk about that news we had from Telix, the HCPCS code for Gozellix. I mean, how big of a deal is this HCPCS code for their revenue potential?
Oh, this is absolutely a catalyst. Remember, the HCPCS code basically means that their imaging agent will be eligible for broader reimbursement. That directly translates to increased revenue potential.
So is this just a small boost, or are we talking about a significant revenue driver here?
Well, considering Gozellix is positioned as one of their key growth products, this is more than just a small bump. It's a potential game changer. It opens the door to wider adoption by healthcare providers.
I see. So not just about increased revenue in the short term, but also paving the way for long-term growth. That's a crucial distinction.
Precisely. It removes a major hurdle for Telix. It's like, well, imagine trying to sell a car without being able to offer financing. Suddenly, a lot more people can afford it.
That's a great analogy. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so big win for Telix. And on the flip side, some legal clouds gathering over Doximity and Dexcom. What's next on our agenda?
So moving on from healthcare, let's talk about legal issues again. This time, it's Doximity facing a shareholder investigation.
Doximity, the online networking platform for doctors.
That's the one. Johnson Fistel, a law firm, is looking into potential legal claims on behalf of Doximity shareholders.
Oh, what kind of claims are we talking about here?
Well, the details are a bit scarce at this point, but it seems to be related to potential violations of federal securities laws.
So another case of possible misconduct? This seems to be a recurring theme today.
It does, doesn't it? Not a great look for the corporate world. And of course, this kind of legal uncertainty, it can definitely put pressure on a company's stock price.
Yeah, absolutely. Investors tend to get spooked by legal troubles. Even if the claims turn out to be baseless, the legal fees, the bad publicity, it all takes a toll.
Exactly. It creates a cloud of uncertainty. And uncertainty, well, the market doesn't like that.
No, it doesn't. So we'll have to see how this develops. What's next on the agenda? Energy?
Right. Let's talk about Texas Pacific Land. Their stock has been a bit volatile lately.
TPL? Yeah, I've heard of them. They own a lot of land in Texas, right? Hence the name.
Ha! Yes, precisely. And that land is rich in, you guessed it, oil and gas resources.
So they're basically a land royalty company.
Exactly. They profit from the oil and gas extracted from their land. And with energy prices fluctuating so much, their stock price tends to follow suit. It's currently trading at, let me just check, 1,047.55 cents. Up slightly today, but down about 5% for the month.
Wow, over $1,000 a share. That's a pricey stock. But a 5% monthly drop isn't too bad considering the volatility we've seen in the energy market.
True, and they're still up significantly year over year, over 33% in fact, so a bit of a mixed bag for TPL.
It is. Macroeconomic factors are definitely playing a role here. The global economic outlook, inflation concerns, all of that impacts energy demand and consequently TPL's stock price.
Okay, so after that little detour into the energy sector, let's get back to legal issues. It seems Petco is facing a class action lawsuit.
Petco, the pet supply retailer, what's the story there?
Well, according to the Rosen law firm, Petco may have violated federal securities laws. They've filed a class action on behalf of shareholders.
Oh, securities violations, that sounds serious. What are the specifics?
The details are still emerging, to be honest. But it seems the lawsuit alleges, well, let's just say there are some questions about whether Petco provided accurate information to investors.
So potential misinformation, that could be a problem. What kind of impact could this lawsuit have on Petco?
Well, these things can drag on for a while, even if the claims are ultimately dismissed. The legal fees, the reputational damage, it can all add up. Not to mention the uncertainty it creates for investors.
Right. Uncertainty, never a good thing in the market. And if the claims turn out to be valid, well, that could be even worse. Fines, settlements, it can get expensive.
Precisely. So definitely something to keep an eye on. We'll have to see how this develops. Okay, so Petco facing legal headwinds. What's next on our list?
I think we still have that other legal issue to discuss regarding Doximity, right? The online networking platform for physicians.
Okay, so Petco facing legal headwinds. What's next on our list? Crypto, perhaps?
Yeah, let's dive into that. We have Thumbs Up, a publicly traded firm making some interesting moves in the crypto space. Apparently, they're considering expanding their holdings beyond Bitcoin.
Oh, beyond Bitcoin? Well, it's not entirely unheard of, but it's definitely a bold move. Most companies dipping their toes into crypto tend to stick with Bitcoin, at least initially.
So what other cryptocurrencies are they looking at? Ethereum, Litecoin?
Well, according to the report, they're evaluating Dogecoin, Solana, and XRP. Quite a diverse mix, I'd say.
Dogecoin? Really? That started as a meme, right? I mean, I know it's gained some legitimacy, but it's still volatile, to say the least.
It is. And Solana, well, they've had their share of technical issues. And XRP, that's the one tied up in that whole SEC lawsuit with Ripple, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So a rather interesting selection of cryptocurrencies. It seems Thumbs Up isn't afraid of a little risk, or a lot of risk, depending on how you look at it.
It does seem that way. High risk, high reward, perhaps? We'll have to see how this plays out. Anything else about Thumbs Up?
Oh, one more thing. Apparently Donald Trump Jr. is an investor.
Trump Jr., huh? Well, that certainly adds another layer to the story. I wonder how much influence he has on their investment decisions.
Yeah, that's a good question. It'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds. A publicly traded company expanding into altcoins with a high-profile investor like Trump Jr. Definitely a story to keep an eye on.
Okay, so after that colorful foray into the crypto world, let's shift gears to something a bit more traditional. Financials. First Commonwealth Financial Corporation. They've announced their Q2 2025 earnings call.
First Commonwealth, FCF, right? What's the date for the call?
July 30th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So mark your calendars, folks.
July 30th. Got it. So we're still a bit away from that. Anything else on First Commonwealth?
Not at the moment, just the announcement of the call itself. But, earnings calls, they can be pretty market moving, especially for financial institutions. A lot of analysts and investors will be listening in, trying to glean insights into the health of the company and the broader financial sector.
Yeah, definitely. Earnings calls are always a big deal. A chance for management to tell their story, answer questions, and hopefully reassure investors, or sometimes not so much.
Exactly. It can be a high-stakes game. A good earnings call can boost a stock price. A bad one can, let's just say it can have the opposite effect.
It can. So we'll have to tune in on July 30th and see what First Commonwealth has to say. Anything else on the financials front?
Okay, so after that financials update, let's move on to something completely different. Mining, Mustang Energy. They've just closed the first tranche of a private placement.
Mustang Energy? MECPF, right? What kind of private placement are we talking about here?
Well, the details are a bit sparse, to be honest. Non-brokered, apparently.
Non-brokered? So they're raising capital directly from investors without using a broker?
Exactly. Which, it can be a cost-effective way to raise capital, but it can also limit the reach of the offering.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how much are they raising, and what are they going to use the money for?
That's the thing. Those details, they haven't been disclosed yet. A bit unusual, but not unheard of.
Huh. So a bit of a mystery then. We'll have to wait and see what they reveal. Anything else on Mustang Energy?
Not at the moment, just the announcement of the first tranche closing. But, private placements, they can be a sign of things to come. Depending on how much they're raising and what they plan to do with the money, it could be a positive catalyst for the stock.
Or not. It all depends on the details, which we don't have yet. So a bit of a wait-and-see situation with Mustang Energy. What's next on our list? Back to legal issues, perhaps?
Okay, so after that mining update, let's move on to something completely different. Healthcare. Bassett Furniture. They've announced their fiscal Q2 results.
Bassett Furniture. BSET, right? What were the numbers like?
Well, that's the interesting thing. They announced the results for the quarter ended May 31st, 2025, but they didn't actually provide any figures.
They didn't? That's unusual. So just an announcement of an announcement? A bit of a tease then.
It does seem that way. A bit unconventional, to say the least. They said the results are available on their website, but, we don't have those details right now.
So a bit of a mystery then. We'll have to check their website later and see what the actual numbers are. Anything else on Bassett Furniture?
Not at the moment, just the cryptic announcement. But, earnings announcements, they can be pretty market-moving, especially in the current economic climate. A lot of analysts and investors they'll be eager to see how Bassett performed.
They will. The furniture industry has been facing some headwinds lately, with supply chain disruptions, inflation, you name it. So these results will be closely scrutinized for sure. What's next on our agenda? Back to legal issues again?
Okay, so after that mining update, let's move on to something completely different. Healthcare. Bassett Furniture. They've announced their fiscal Q2 results.
Bassett Furniture. BSET, right? What were the numbers like?
Well, that's the interesting thing. They announced the results for the quarter ended May 31st, 2025, but they didn't actually provide any figures.
They didn't? That's unusual. So just an announcement of an announcement? A bit of a tease then.
It does seem that way. A bit unconventional, to say the least. They said the results are available on their website, but, we don't have those details right now.
So a bit of a mystery then. We'll have to check their website later and see what the actual numbers are. Anything else on Bassett Furniture?
Not at the moment. Just the cryptic announcement, which doesn't give us much to go on, really. It's unusual, to say the least, to announce results without, the actual results. Almost like a pre-announcement announcement.
Yeah, it is a bit odd. Makes you wonder what they're trying to manage, if anything. Perhaps they're still finalizing some numbers, or maybe they're trying to control the narrative in some way.
Could be. We'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. In the meantime, though, not much we can do with that, except perhaps speculate wildly, which we won't do. Not on this podcast, anyway.
Haha, good policy. Wild speculation is best left to, other podcasts. So moving on then, anything else on our agenda today?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we've covered pretty much everything, from software takeovers to retail resilience, healthcare wins and woes, crypto craziness, and even a touch of financials and mining. Quite a whirlwind tour of the market today.
It was. A lot to unpack, for sure. But hey, that's what makes the market so dynamic, right? Always something new happening, always something to keep an eye on.
Exactly. And that, my friends, is why we're here, to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of the market and hopefully make some sense of it all. So until next time, this is Podcastify, signing off. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and a special shout out to all our listeners overseas. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay profitable. Goodbye.
And from me as well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Podcastify.